This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the US. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
This episode is brought to you by Factor. Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code listen50 for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50, code listen50. T's and C's apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those who don't identify as either, you are listening to a bonus episode of Ratchet and Respectable. Last week, we discussed the Diddy trial, both in our regular Wednesday episode and also a bonus episode where we talked about the trial on day 3. Cassie had been called to the stand to testify. Cassie had 2 more days of testimony, including a cross-examination by the defense, and that's mostly what we're going to talk about today. The trial is moving very quickly. The judge said as much. There will be no lollygagging in his courtroom. Cassie had a lot to say. I think a different courtroom might have adjourned. I think she finished around maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock on Friday. There is a type of judge that would have been like, okay, you know what? It's been a long week. We've heard a lot. Let's close early and begin again next week. The judge was like, we got an hour left. You got some witnesses? And it brought 2 more people to the stand. One of them was an investigator for Homeland Security. This is the investigator that searched Diddy's hotel room after he was arrested to be held in custody. That was interesting testimony as well. Like, sir, you brought yourself from your Miami residence to come to New York where your good lawyer had negotiated for you to turn yourself into the feds. And you had baby oil and drugs and a woman in your hotel room? Did, according to Homeland Security. I mean, we know you got problems, but you have an addiction as well. We'll talk about that. Also, the last 30 minutes, because the judge was like, we're going to use all our allotted time. Dawn Richard from Danity Kane and Dirty Money, she testified as well. She's coming back on the stand on Monday. I'm recording this on Sunday. I wanted to make sure we got our day 4 and 5 recap started before we got into the next week. I'd like to remind people, because I see a lot of this conversation online about, like, is the prosecution proving their case? I'm not seeing the RICO. I'm not seeing the sex trafficking. I'm not seeing the this, and this. I would like to remind people that we have just concluded the first week of an 8-week trial. Like, we have at least, at minimum, 7 more weeks to go, like damn near 2 months. So no, the prosecution will not prove their entire case in the first 5 days. That's unrealistic, and I'm not sure why people are expecting that. Additionally, I'm not sure that we're all operating from the same understanding of what the prosecution is trying to prove. And to that end, I'm going to refer back to the grand jury indictment so we can all have a working understanding of what exactly the prosecution is attempting to do in this case. Before I do that, 2 housekeeping things. Y'all dragged the fuck out of me last week for mispronouncing Kid Cudi's name. And I deserved it. I butchered it. The funny thing is I thought it was Cudi, and then I was like, you know how I always butcher shit? And I was like, it's probably the opposite of what I think because I always fuck up names so bad. I did get it right later in the episode because I was sleepy and I wasn't like actively trying to pronounce it the way I thought it was supposed to be pronounced. No justification. My bad. Y'all dragged me. I saw every message. Y'all DM'd, y'all sent emails, y'all was on my page telling me I couldn't pronounce shit. I mean, I know I can't, but y'all can really keep that commentary to your own sites. Y'all don't really need to come on my page and then tag me and tell me I'm dumb. Y'all can just say that on your own pages. You don't need to actually say it to me. have your opinions. That's fine. You're entitled to them, just like I am. But like, I don't really need to hear, like, I don't know, 100 people telling me I'm stupid. Thank you. Also, on one of the episodes last week, I said something about Diddy would kick Cassie out of her apartment that he was paying for, and then she would have to go stay with her parents. I said, I think she went to the Bronx. She actually went to Connecticut. Small detail, but when I get something wrong and I'm aware of it, I like to correct it. So let's get into this grand jury indictment, because people's understanding of what RICO is and exactly what Diddy is being charged with, if you actually read the indictment, you would see that actually the prosecution is doing a pretty good job of laying out their case thus far. I think a lot of times when people think of racketeering, they think of the mob or they think of maybe like a gang. Not necessarily. A couple things that I had to look up just based on some of the things I saw online. A RICO charge doesn't require the business to be making money or in pursuit of making money. It could just be a business where people are colluding to do criminal shit, even if it doesn't make money. Again, usually when we hear about RICO charges, we're talking about the mob, we're talking about gangs. The core reason they're doing the criminal shit is profitability, not just pleasure or power. In the case of Diddy, allegedly. I thought that was a really important distinction because I think that was one of the things that was throwing people off. I'm now looking at the grand jury indictment. I'm looking at page 9, where the feds lay out exactly what the racketeering conspiracy that they are accusing Sean Combs of includes. They go very specific, Title 18, United States Code, sections 161.1, 1961.5, consisting of, here are the racketeering charges that the federal government is trying to prove specifically in this case. They're saying Sean Combs, the head of Combs Enterprise, committed multiple acts involving kidnapping, an attempt at kidnapping. If you recall in Cassie's testimony, she said she and Combs had an incident. He stomped out her face in the car. When they pulled up to his residence, she jumped out the car and ran down the street. She said he sent his security after her to snatch her up and take her back to Combs' house. That would be an example of kidnapping. Multiple acts involving arson. I don't know what the multiple is at this point. I'm thinking specifically Kid Cudi came up in Cassie's testimony, talked about blowing up his car. It was a Porsche. And again, apologies to that man and butchering his name and to the Porsche in his driveway. I ain't mean no harm, sir. I ain't mean no harm. I believe I think it was on Rolling Stone, they found the incident report for the address where Kid Cudi's name was on the title of the house. So Kid Cudi's house, essentially. The police report of it seemed that someone had split the roof of the car. I'm going to go ahead and guess it was a drop-top convertible, but somebody had split the roof of the car and put a Molotov cocktail inside, and that's what blew up the car. I'm going to also go ahead and guess that Kid Cudi's going to be called to the stand at some point to be like, yes, my car blew up in my driveway. So that would be an act involving arson. Under RICO, you need to prove that the acts happened multiple times. Multiple can be just 2. So the feds are going to have to prove there was another act of arson somewhere along the way. I don't think we've heard of that act yet. Multiple acts of bribery. This falls under racketeering as well. The first person to take the stand was hotel security guard at the Intercontinental. Remember the video that we saw that ran all over CNN and everywhere of Diddy attacking Cassie at the hotel elevator bank? A security guard was called in regards to that incident. He testified that when he went up to Diddy's room, I think the second time, that Diddy tried to give him a bunch of cash, which he perceived as a bribe. Also, it came up somewhere else. Was this in Cassie's lawsuit? It might be in this lawsuit that Diddy or one of his staff paid, I want to say like $100,000 to somebody at the hotel to get that tape, the video of him beating Cassie in the elevator bank. Those 2 incidents alone, if proven, could be considered multiple acts involving bribery. Multiple acts indictable under Title 18, United States Code, section blah, 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 blah. Tampering with a witness, victim, or an informant. I don't think at this time this has come up in the trial, but if you recall, part of the reason that Diddy was denied bail was because of the alleged witness tampering. I'm reading the story from September 2024 on NBC News. They're detailing an incident of alleged witness tampering with Diddy and Kalana Harper from Dirty Money. They said that he called her allegedly 58 times in 4 days. Her groupmate filed a lawsuit against Diddy, and then the calls abruptly stopped after Harper put out a statement saying that she didn't have the same recollections that Dawn Richard did in her lawsuit. The article notes here, the allegation of communication between Combs and Harper is one of several examples of witness tampering and obstruction of justice prosecutors laid out for a judge on Tuesday, as they argued that Combs was too dangerous, violent, and dismissive of the federal case against him to be allowed to return home before trial. This is a quote from the U.S. Attorney Emily Johnson. She said, "This incident is just one way of making clear that this defendant has the ongoing ability to keep witnesses, even witnesses who might have been around for very distant in time abuse, in pocket and at his disposal." So I'm guessing incidents like that will come up in the case. Multiple acts of forced labor, multiple acts of sex trafficking. That could apply both to Cassie. In order for it to be considered trafficking, it just needs to go from state to state or from the states to another country. Cassie did testify that the freak-offs took place in multiple states in the U.S. and a couple islands. There's multiple acts relating to transportation and inducement to travel for purposes of prostitution and other illegal sexual activities. At some point in the trial, the prosecution gave Cassie a folder, I believe, of pictures of different men, sex workers that participated in the freak-offs. And for some of them, Cassie said, well, yeah, he was with us in this state, this state, this state, that state. And him, okay, yeah, he was here in this place, and this place, that place. She ran through several names, talked about the different locations that freak-offs with these men had taken place. This is the last one under RICO. It says multiple offenses involving the possession with intent to distribute or distribution of narcotics and controlled substances, including cocaine, oxycodone, a bunch of shit I can't pronounce. Gamma hydroxybutyric acid. I have no idea. Let's look it up. What is the street name for gamma? GHB. Bromo -2.5. This substance is abused for its hallucinogenic effects, primarily as a club drug in the rave culture. What's the street name of it? Nexus? I'm too green. I don't know about this. If you recall, Cassie saying that when they did freak-offs, Diddy would give her drugs. Sometimes she would ask for them, but she would ask either Diddy or she would ask his staff. She testified that if she wanted drugs, she could just call someone and they would always bring them to her. She also testified at one point, she said Diddy had a Louis Vuitton toiletry bag that was always full of drugs that he always kept on his person. Just the fact that it's a toiletry bag full of drugs, I'm going to guess that the amount of drugs in there would meet the threshold of intent to distribute. And also, he was distributing them, if to no one else, to Cassie, but also to the sex workers, to the male prostitutes, the escorts. The escort that took the stand, he was the second witness. He said that he and Cassie took drugs together. I don't know if he specifically said Diddy gave us the drugs, but I'm going to imagine if he showed up sober and Diddy and Cassie were there and drugs were taken, that he probably was given them by either Diddy or Cassie, and Cassie ain't had no money, so Diddy. So I've laid out all of what the prosecution is saying. These are all the ways that Diddy's behavior would classify under RICO charges. So when you're listening to the testimony or listening to recaps of the testimony, this is the lens that you should be looking through in order to determine whether the prosecution is making a proper case for RICO. Everyone keeps talking about the sex trafficking, the escort. It's bigger than that. Again, like the arson, the drugs, the kidnapping. At this early juncture, I repeat, we have 7 more weeks of this trial to go. The prosecution is only on, 1, 2, 3, their 5th witness in the first week, and they haven't even finished with the 5th witness. I don't want to make any assessments or judgments about the case, but the idea that the prosecution is not proving anything, that they're not making a case, is just not accurate. You might think that the charges are bullshit, and that's fine. That's an opinion. One of the reasons that I hesitate to make any assessment about the case thus far is, again, we have 2 months of this. The prosecution is laying out their case. The defense will also have about the same amount of time to lay out theirs. Somewhere around maybe like week 7, when things are starting to wrap it up, we can start having like informed opinions about who's made a better case. But at this point, we're not even like 10% of the way through. I know there's lots of people online, journalists, lawyers. There's lots of talking heads on all the networks pontificating. Really, all it is at this point is pontificating. No one knows because the evidence hasn't been laid out. The defense doesn't even know who's coming next. We do know a little bit. We know Cassie's mom is testifying. There was rumor that Aubrey O'Day was going to testify. She put up a post on social media about being in New York and having a lot to say. And everybody, self included, thought that meant that, like, she was headed to the courtroom. She did clarify a day later, saying that, in fact, no, she is not testifying. She's instead doing a podcast. She's going to offer commentary on the Diddy trial. Honest work for honest pay. She was there up close and personal for a good chunk of it. She knows a lot more than most people. We're still not done talking about Diddy's charges. We need to talk about sex trafficking and what exactly that means, according to the grand jury. The prosecution has put forth that Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained a person, victim one, that would be Cassie, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused victim one to engage in commercial sex acts, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that victim one was engaging in commercial sex acts as a result of force, fraud, and coercion. Cassie, her whole first day of testimony, basically being like, Diddy beat the brakes off of me and I was forced to participate in the freak-offs. The times that I tried to leave the freak-offs, the hotel incident that was on video, a freak-off was happening in the room. Cassie was trying to leave and Diddy threw her on the floor, kicked her body, and literally dragged her back to the room. That would be evidence of force and coercion. Recruited. I've been referring to it as grooming. He signed Cassie to his label for a 10-album deal. And many people have pointed out that even for the time, like, that was insane. They're like, people were signing for 6, 7. Like, why would you sign somebody for a 10-album deal? And then also people were sort of evaluating, Cassie as an artist. She's a real pretty girl. She had a decent enough voice in the studio. Stage presence, not so great. There were some really bad performances early on. This sort of kneecapped her. But they were like, did you ever really hire Cassie for anything other than, like, to prey on her? Like, did you actually want to make her like a legitimate artist? Because you signed her to a 10-album deal. She put out an album and she said she recorded enough music for 9 other albums, but none of them ever came out. So did he sign her to Bad Boy to be his artist, or because he always wanted her to be some version of his sex slave? We for sure know that he transported Cassie across state lines, enticed, harbored, transported, all of that, maintained. We'll talk about the defense's cross-examination of Cassie, because they're painting a much different story, obviously, than the prosecution is. We'll get into that in detail in a second, but I do think it's relevant to stay here that Cassie believed that she was in a relationship with Sean Combs. When the defense cross-examined Cassie, they presented a different narrative, much different narrative than Cassie presented on day one. She says, yes, we were in a relationship, but he also, like, beat the brakes off of me, and I took a lot of drugs. We both did. We did these freak-offs sometimes for up to 4 days at a time, and then I was in recovery after that. And again, he beat the brakes off of me. Like, it was a whole cycle of, like, he's beating me, we're doing freak-offs. He's beating me, we're doing freak-offs. That's the version of the story that came out when she was testifying the first day and a half with the prosecution. On cross-examination, they point out, they say, hey, you were in a relationship with this guy and you loved him and you wanted to make him happy. So you guys like to do drugs together, and we've got these text messages of you, saying sweet nothings to each other, and you also saying that you wanted to participate in the freak-offs, and that he went out of town and you guys didn't have one, and you said that, gosh, I wish we could have had a freak-off before you went. Cassie says that, at that time, like, it was just basically like saying anything. She said that one of the reasons that she had the freak-offs with him, I think she said this to the prosecution, she said that, that was really the only time that she had to spend with him. And she wanted to make him happy because she loved him. And she said the freak-offs were kind of like the only thing that he thought she was good at. The rest of the time, he was always criticizing her for something or another. And I was like, my God, he groomed the fuck out of this girl. I saw several people online saying that, like, essentially, like, he was, like, Cassie was his bottom bitch. Like, it's some real Iceberg Slim type shit. And I was like, I kind of agree. She said things like, she thought at one point she was his only girlfriend, and then she found out that there were other people. She also says that, 7 years into their relationship, she didn't have a relationship with his children. And he was like, they're my children. I don't just bring them around anybody. And she was like, we've been together for 7 years. Like, what are you talking about? He would spend all his holidays with Kim Porter and their children. And Cassie would be wherever she was, but she wouldn't be with him on holidays because he was with his family. And she was like, hey, like, I get it. Like, you have kids and you have kids with, their mothers, obviously. But like, what about me? Well, it was like, well, what about you? She talks about a woman, Gina, that he dated that she was like super jealous of. This is a really sad detail to me. She talked about Kim Porter's passing. And she said, and I remember Diddy doing this. Like he said afterward, he was online mourning for like months. But he said Kim was his soulmate. And Cassie said she reached out to him privately. And she said, soulmate, that was your soulmate. She was like, what if the last 11 years with me is what she implied. But what did the last 11 years mean? He had convinced her. He started dating her again when she was 21. He was around 38. But he had convinced her that there was something real there. And it's only in like later years that she's come to the understanding that like, oh shit, like essentially like I was his sex worker. She was very much in love with him. I think he love bombed her and then flipped on her and then beat the brakes off of her. She didn't really see it coming. Again, she was 19, involved with someone who'd been a full-time predator for like 20 years, likely practiced it on many other women. Because again, like how he behaved with Cassie, that's not something you wake up one day at 36 and be like, okay, I've been a pretty good upstanding guy all this time, and now I think I want to be a motherfucking monster. She even testified. She said, like, in the relationship, like the freak-offs would happen and she would feel like, like trash afterward. She was too embarrassed about them to like tell her mom. And obviously the beating, she says at one point, like, you treat me like a rag doll. But then also a few days later, she says she loves him. I guess we are talking about all this now. She says she broke up with him. And she says somewhere around 2023 is when she started having, and they've been apart for maybe like 5 years. But 2023 is when she actually goes to therapy for like PTSD because she's having like suicidal thoughts. She said she was trying to like run into traffic and her husband had to hold her and stop her. Like, it doesn't hit her until years later, which is consistent with a lot of stories that you hear about women who have been groomed. If you just like stuff you read online, you'll hear women talk about like when they were 16, 17, 18, 19, they were dating men who were in their late 20s, early mid 30s even. And they were like, at the time, I was like, oh no, I'm mature and I understand everything and I know what I'm doing and I got this. And then like looking back on it as a grown woman, you're just like, wait, what the fuck was that? Like all that shit was crazy. That man was a predator. The fuck? That's kind of the sense that I have of what happened to Cassie. Let's get to count 3 because we still haven't even talked about what she actually testified to. Transportation to engage in prostitution. This is the 3rd count. It alleges Combs transported, aided, and abetted and willfully caused the transportation of female victims and commercial sex workers in interstate and foreign commerce on multiple occasions with the intent that they engage in prostitution. So, again, it's one of the counts that are under the RICO charge, but then it's also separate here. So people be like, the prosecution didn't prove shit. Cassie, again, sat there and looked at the pictures of men who they were engaged in freak-offs with and identified the person by name and then said, yes, here, listing multiple states. Gonna go ahead and assume that more of the escorts will be testifying in this trial saying that, like, yes, I am an escort and I had sex with them in this place and this place and this place. They flew me here. This person from Combs Enterprises paid for my transportation or I paid and I was reimbursed for. This one is almost a done deal. That's why I hear folks who are like, they're not proving their case. And I'm like, did you actually read the grand jury indictment? Because their case is not done. And again, the defense has not put on their case, like not even a little bit. They've only had cross-examinations. That is not putting on a case. But the idea that the prosecution is not making the case for what they've charged Diddy with, yeah, they are. They're laying a pretty strong foundation thus far. Can't call it on how it will turn out. But the idea that they're not making a case is just, it's not accurate. I'm just saying. Let us actually get into what happened in the courtroom on day 4 and day 5. I'm just going to run through this relatively quickly. Also, I do recaps on my actual social media pages where I don't give commentary. It's just the facts. I usually put them on Threads first. If you follow me at Demetria L. Lucas, I just list a summary based on what I've read, usually on CNN, New York Times, BBC, Hollywood Reporter. I do a different combination of around 3 legitimate news outlets to make sure I get a full picture of what went on in the trial, obviously because I'm not in there. So Diddy day 4, I just want to be as transparent as possible. My summary came from CNN, New York Times, and New York Post. Let's see. Cassie takes the stand. She's ready for cross-examination. The judge suggested that the defense needs to streamline their questions and move quickly because Cassie has to be finished with her testimony by Friday. They keep saying 8.5 months pregnant, but they were expecting that she had the baby this weekend. I was like 8.999 months pregnant. Day 4 testimony is relatively calm in comparison to the first 3 days. First 3 days were the escort talking about all the different kinds of sex they used to have, and then Cassie also detailing the beatings and all the crazy sex that was happening at the freak-offs. Cassie testifies that early on, she and Diddy were very much in love. They would text each other a bunch of sweet nothings. She described him as, quote, very sweet and very attentive. In my head, I was like, so love bombing. She acknowledged that he cheated on her a lot. She said early on in the relationship, she was very hurt, but over time, not so much, with the exception of her jealousy over Kim Porter and a woman named Gina. I wonder if Gina's going to testify. I'll save the Gina stuff until it actually comes up in the trial, like for real, for real. I got a feeling she's going to come up again. This is what really got me. This is still early on in their relationship. She texts Combs, and I think this is a testament to just how young she is. Cassie met Diddy through her then boyfriend, Ryan Leslie, who was a producer. And she began dating Ryan Leslie when she was 18 or 19 years old. Ryan Leslie was around 8 years older than her. So she's 18, he's 26, 27. He's too goddamn old. Like, really, you shouldn't really be dating anybody over 23. She cheats on Ryan Leslie with Diddy. She also cheats on Diddy with her now husband. And I was like, no breather in between all of this stuff? None. She says her relationship with Diddy was platonic until her 21st birthday. He uses the occasion of this big birthday bash that he did for her, in which he invited Britney Spears, like mega pop icon, and he uses this occasion to force himself on Cassie with a kiss for the first time. You totally plotted that shit out. She says the first time they had sex, they were in Miami. She did say she was high. I don't remember what she said she was high on. I think ecstasy. 2007, she texts Combs that it's only been a week of being together. And she says, it's the best and the worst. She tells Combs, she says, I'm dreaming of our beautiful future together. That's a quote. She adds, on the other hand, you're constantly weary of me. You say I'm sneaky. I never make the right decisions. I'm a spoiled brat. I'm dramatic, disrespectful. And for some reason, you just don't trust me. This is what he's saying to her within week 1 of knowing each other. This is classic narc shit. He's setting her up to jump through hoops to prove to him that she is not the negative things that he thinks that she is. And still, despite that, she's dreaming of a beautiful together forever. It's 19-year-old shit. You think everything's forever at 19. You meet someone and everything feels really great and you're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. We're going to be together forever. Or not. She did end up with him for 11 years, but my God, first focus less on the quantity, more on the quality. Cassie texts Diddy. This is still pretty early on in their relationship. She's scolding him for not calling her enough. She says, I know you can take 3 minutes. You don't even try. She reminds him, she says, quote, I don't need your money. I need some attention.
The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
2009, they had a freak off. That wasn't the first one. It is the one where Cassie texts Combs and she says the freak off made her, quote, feel dirty and grimy. And she says that she's going back and forth with her desire to do them. Says that the freak-offs were fine for her when they were, quote, so in love. And she said, I did them. There were no questions asked. But she was like, now I don't feel the same level of love. She also texts him in 2009. She says, I'm always ready for a freak-off. He says, I can't wait. And she responds, I can't wait either. When she was speaking to the prosecution, she said, I just wanted to be with him. They asked her, they said, did you like anything about the freak-offs? She said that's when she actually got to spend time with him. She says the only time he wasn't really criticizing her is when she was doing the freak-offs. It's like the only thing he thought she was actually good at. And she said, and so that's kind of why she did them. Also, 2009, she texted Diddy about the freak-off. She says that they felt right. And she said it literally made sense for the next step in our sex life together. But she says, I get nervous that I'm just becoming your girlfriend that you get your fantasies off with. And that's it. Jesus. Because that's what it was. She has an inkling of it, but she doesn't know what to do with it. Cassie says she didn't want Combs' staff to know about the freak-off. She said she never spoke to the staff about them. She doesn't recall them being in the room during the freak-offs, but she does acknowledge that they did setups. Part of the prosecution's allegations against Combs is that Combs Enterprise was a business that did criminal shit, and staff of Combs Enterprise did illegal shit on behalf of the enterprise. So setting up freak-offs, bringing in baby oil. If you believe the freak-offs are sex trafficking, or if you believe the freak-offs, which this isn't even in question really, if you believe the freak-offs are with prostitutes who have been transported across state lines, and you are setting up the freak-offs, whether you're booking the hotel room, whether you're staffing them with supplies, the baby oil, the lighting, the drugs, the whatever, then you are now participating in a criminal act. So even if you don't think Cassie was sex trafficked, if the prostitutes, the escorts who were present had been moved across state lines, then yeah, it's criminal. They asked Cassie, they said, did you feel that Combs was addicted to anything? And she says, yes, success. And they said, anything else? And she was like, okay, opiates. The defense's argument, and this is based on their opening statement, this is not me, creating a theory. The defense's argument is like, hey, he's not a good person. He's not a good person. We acknowledge that. He was angry at everybody, and he was beating everybody. It wasn't personal to Cassie. He hit other people, too. He was always angry. And part of the reason is because he naturally has a temper. He's also a bad drunk. Some of the times he don't even remember the stuff he does because he was blacked out. Also, he would stop trying to be high. He went to rehab at least once. He tried to pull himself off of the drugs because he knew he was doing too much. He was trying to do the right thing. And that made him aggy and irritable. So when he was frustrated and he has this temper, he would just fly off the handle. But that's just who he was. He wasn't doing all that just to convince Cassie or other people to keep doing these freak-offs. He was just angry and violent just because he's angry and violent. But it wasn't like toward the end to do illegal shit. That's literally their defense. Let's see. We talked about that already. Kim Porter, the holidays. He wasn't with Cassie. This one's important. I thought this was actually really good for the defense. Diddy sends Cassie a series of texts about the freak-offs, and he's checking in that she's on board with them. He texts her, quote, I just put some plans in motion. Let me know to stop. He follows up because she doesn't respond to him. He says, let me know if I'm headed in the wrong direction so I can cancel. It's seemingly in this instance, this is still very early on in the situation. I think this is like 2011. He's like checking in with her regarding the freak-offs. He's asking for her to weigh in. And he's saying to her in writing, like, if this is not what you want, like, I can cancel. If this is not what you want, I can stop. When I read that, and I was like, oh, that doesn't look good for Cassie. In 2012, Diddy had an overdose. I think this is really important for the defense to mention because they're, again, trying to say that Diddy was high all the time. He was sometimes blackout high. He was doing way too many drugs. I think it's kind of a way to relieve him of some of the responsibility for the worst of what he did. Like, he didn't know what he was doing. He was high as shit, as evidenced by the fact that he overdosed. So 2012, Diddy overdosed. All in the same day, he and Cassie had a freak-off. They went to a sex club, and then Diddy, without her, left and went to a party at the Playboy Mansion. It said he OD'd on opiates and was taken to the hospital. I want to know how many people they paid off and how much they paid them, that we're just finding out that Diddy, one of the biggest stars in the country, like the height of Bad Boy was over, but Diddy was still majorly popular. One of the biggest stars in the country, overdosed, had to be taken to the hospital, and we never heard a peep about it until the year of our Lord, 2025, during testimony on federal charges. That's crazy. I also think it's a testament to the power, fear, and the money of Diddy, if I was the prosecution, I would have played that up. That's a lot of pull. It's a lot of power, a lot of money, well spent. 2013 is when she says that she feels like she doesn't have a relationship with his children after 7 years. 2015, Cassie and Combs broke up while she was filming in South Africa. She saw a video of him with another woman at an event, and she forwarded it to him and his staff. She CC'd the staff because she felt betrayed that Combs was cheating on her, and the staff didn't tell her. I'm like, ma'am, young man, it's his staff. It's not your staff. It's his staff. He pays their bills, which they literally use to pay for their life, their rent, their mortgage, their cars, their cell phone, the ties to their church, whatever. He employs them. He pays for their lives. You thought his staff was going to betray him and tell you that he was dating another woman, especially when you knew the whole time. At this point, it's like 2013. You've been with him for years at this point, which you acknowledged early on. Like, where you were in a monogamous relationship with him, he was not in a monogamous relationship with you. There were always other women. But you mad about this particular one? It doesn't say who the woman was. Maybe that's why she was so upset. But the idea that, like, you felt betrayed, that his staff didn't tell you, ma'am. But also, this was something I was surprised that the defense didn't hammer. Cassie testifies on 3 different occasions that she and Combs were on break. They were no longer together. There's the incident with Kid Cudi. She says she and Combs were on break and she started dating Cudi. And then again here, she says she gets angry at him because she sees that he's gone to this film premiere with another woman. They're supposed to be together. She breaks up with him. She's in South Africa. So again, she has the agency to break up with him. And then on day 5, she testifies she and Combs were on break. Cassie had started dating, or at least he accused her of dating, this NFL player. So this is 3 different occasions that they're on break. Cassie has said repeatedly that she had to be in this relationship. She couldn't get away from him. There are many instances that we're aware of at this point. The elevator bank, for instance, at the hotel, she's trying to leave the freak off. He beats the brakes off of her and drags her back. The story that I told you about, he beats her in the car. They pull up to, I guess, his house, and she gets out the car and goes running down the street. She's trying to flee, and the security captures her and brings her back to the house and keeps her there. There's another incident that comes up later. She says she broke up with Combs. They went for a closure dinner. He drove her home, and then he raped her in her living room. Those 3 instances, right? She's like, well, I tried to leave, and these are the crazy things that happened. I really couldn't come and go the way that I wanted. When the prosecution asked, she said that, he was in charge of like every moment of her day. She said he would blow up her phone, and if she didn't answer, he would send his staff or his security to her house for them to like put eyes on her and be like, he's calling you. You need to answer your phone. Controlling shit like that. But there's also instances here where she says, well, we weren't together, we broke up, and I started seeing somebody else. If I were the defense, I would have hammered that to be like, hey, you said you couldn't come and go. You had to be with him. You had no agency in this regard. But then 3 different times that you said that you guys were on break and you started seeing other people. So you did have the ability to go. Did you or did you not? I would have asked her to explain that. I'm sure there was a reason that they didn't. I'm just not aware of what that reason is. During the 2015 break, Cassie started dating Michael B. Jordan. I was like, wait, what? Michael B. Jordan be keeping his shit on the low, don't he? The only person we really know of him publicly dating, there were rumors of people before Lori, but there was nobody he trotted out and about, not to my knowledge. I think there was something allegedly with him and like Snow Allegra, but I never saw them. They didn't walk a red carpet together. They weren't like all over the internet. Lori Harvey was literally the only person. But come to find out, he was dating Cassie at one point. He likes a cute girl. I'll give him that. Many people have asked, they were like, hey, like, Cassie, like, where's your family? You getting the brakes beat off you, like, on a regular basis. Like, where's your family? Where's your father? Cassie has a mother and a father. She also has brothers. She didn't tell her family about the abuse for a really long time. She did eventually tell them. There's no like, well, yes, I told my father and my brothers, and then they tried to kill Diddy. Like, no, she did tell them. I'm sharing it with you as a fact that was conveyed. Cassie also said she had side effects from all of the drug use. She said she lost her sense of smell and taste, and she had a numbing in her arm. She also said she had dissociative effects from ketamine use. She didn't explain what the dissociative effects were. She just said dissociative effects. Maybe she did in the summaries that I read. They didn't explain it, so I don't know. We are playing a bit of telephone here since I'm not actually sitting in the trial. The defense, remember I was saying they're trying to say that Diddy was violent because of the drugs or coming off the drugs. They asked Cassie if Diddy was going through withdrawal during the elevator bank incident at the Intercontinental. Is that why he was violent? And Cassie says she doesn't recall. They also asked Cassie if she actually saw Diddy dangle a staffer over the balcony. This is something she said to the prosecution. And she says, yes, I did see it. And the defense shows her a text from shortly after the incident where she indicates that she heard about what happened, that she didn't actually see it. And the defense asked her if she was on drugs the night of the incident. And Cassie says she can't recall. So it's a minor detail overall. It's just a small way to question Cassie's recollection and also her credibility. Right after that, the defense also points out a discrepancy. I can't remember if it was day 2 or 3. Cassie testified that she and Diddy were in the middle of a freak-off, and one of the security guards came in to say that Suge Knight was at a diner nearby. Diddy got dressed, grabbed some guns, and he and the security guard went out. Cassie said she didn't go with them. And then the defense says, well, you told an investigator, I guess last year, that you actually did go. And so Cassie clarifies that she stayed. The thing with Suge and the guns and all that isn't what's on trial here, but it is a way to just point out like some inconsistencies and things that Cassie is saying. So it's like, okay, if you're inconsistent here, if you're not credible here, where else are you inconsistent? Where else are you not credible? A couple more things. We're wrapping up day 4. Cassie confirms that the baby oil was not laced with drugs. There was a rumor online. Remember the 1,000 bottles of baby oil? How could you forget? How could you forget the 1,000 bottles of baby oil? People were saying that the baby oil was laced with drugs, and that's why people were doing all this crazy shit. They were high because they took drugs, not because there were drugs leaking into their skin via the baby oil. Cassie confirms that that wasn't the case. Also, Cassie would sometimes watch Combs have sex with other women. It wasn't always bringing in male escorts. Sometimes it was women, and that happened 4 to 5 times. The defense asked Cassie if she was aware that her lawsuit would ruin Combs' career. One of the things that the defense seems to be hinting at, I don't think they laid this out in the opening argument, that Cassie is a jealous ex. When we talk about day 5, a couple times she mentions being jealous of Kim Porter, but then specifically, the last time that she saw Diddy before this trial was at Kim Porter's memorial service. And the point that I brought up before, when Diddy says that Kim is his soulmate, and then Cassie asked him, well, what were the last 11 years then? Like basically all that time, that the over decade I spent with you and all the stuff that we did, like what did that mean if Kim, the person before me, was actually your soulmate? I point that out because defense asked Cassie, were you aware that filing the lawsuit, the lawsuit, like November 2023, where the freak-offs and the baby oil first came into our public consciousness? The defense asked, were you aware that filing this lawsuit would ruin Combs' career? And she says, I could understand that. Yeah. So I think they're kind of trying to point out that they had this relationship together. And as time has gone on, Cassie realizes that he didn't feel the way about her that she felt about him. And so maybe she filed this lawsuit because she's jealous. They ask her, I think it's on day 5, they ask her, did you file this lawsuit because you and your husband needed the money? You guys were living with your parents. Looks like the funds were low. That's why you filed this lawsuit accusing him of all these things, because you wanted money. And she was like, no, we were just moving from the West Coast to the East Coast. That's all. But yeah, I think they're trying to paint this as, she's mad about the way things turned out. She's seeking revenge, or she just wants money because she's hurt that he didn't feel the same way she did. Remember I was saying like young girls date these much older guys and they don't realize until much later it was grooming? I also said it was 2023 when Cassie really started processing what had happened in the relationship. That's when she actually went and got therapy. Like 4 or 5 years after you got away from Diddy, like all that time with no therapy, like baby. But maybe that's when she started to realize some things. I think that's one of the angles that the defense is going to try to go for. We are just now getting to day 5. Day 5 is a lot, but I think I covered a lot of this stuff. Day 5 reporting is sourced from BBC, New York Times, and CNN. Cassie is still under cross-examination. I'm just going to run through these really quick. The defense is purposely portraying Diddy as a jealous boyfriend. In addition to what I said before about him being either drunk or on drugs or going through withdrawal and that making him behave the way that he does, they also are trying to position that he was jealous. So he beat Cassie because he was jealous, because he was drunk, because he was high, or because he was trying to withdraw from drugs, but not to coerce her into having sex that she didn't want to have with a bunch of escorts for like days at a time, just because he was jealous, not because of any of the other stuff. An example of that jealousy, it says 2012, Diddy blocked Cassie from doing a Common video. It says in 2013, Diddy took Cassie's phone because he suspected that she danced with Chris Brown. Cassie says she never danced with Chris Brown. 2013, the defense brought this up. Cassie got into a bar fight. She was at her brother's birthday party. If I remember, she saw a woman she thought was taking pictures of her, and she fought the woman. She texted Diddy, "I tried to kill a bitch." They're using this to say that, Diddy was temperamental and violent, but like Cassie could be too. 2014, Cassie threatened to kill a man. We talked about this on day 1 or day 2. Somebody reached out to Cassie and they said they had seen a video of her during a freak off. She went to confront this person. Diddy actually told her to do it. She went to confront this person, and there's audio of Cassie threatening the person, saying that she would kill them and then Diddy would kill them too. So they're using this to say that like Cassie did have agency. Like she's running up on people, threatening to kill them, and that she also has a temper. This is a two-way street with her and Diddy. Remember when I told you that the defense asked Cassie, they said, hey, was Diddy high or was he going through withdrawal during that hotel incident? And Cassie was like, I really don't know. The defense points out here, they said a month after the elevator incident, Combs went to rehab. He sent Cassie a video of him hiking, and he said on the video, he says, quote, "As you grow, I want you to know I'm growing." Nigga. She does acknowledge that there were times when Diddy would abuse her when he was blackout drunk. And she says other times he was well aware because, quote, "it's just who he was." And she also says that she witnessed him be violent with others too, which supports the defense's argument that like he beat you, but it wasn't personal because he beat everybody. Which I was like, Lord, is this really the defense? It is. Days after the hotel incident, the one we all saw, Diddy texts Cassie. Her face and body would still be bruised up from where he kicked her. He kicked the shit out that girl. We all saw it. He texted her, quote, "I'm so horny for you." What? Again, less than a week, she still would have had bruises on her. Less than a week later, he texted her that he loved her. And she responded that she loved him too. I was like, oh, not that I wasn't aware that this was like, full on fucking dysfunction. This has surpassed my understanding at this point. And I'm not a she asked for it person. I'm not a, well, why didn't she leave person? I understand that this relationship is based in a massive power indifference. I understand this relationship is based in grooming. I don't know if I'm shocked. I think I'm stunned by how fucked up she was. That's not me putting a blame on her for it. I believe she was groomed from 19 with a seasoned predator and never stood a chance. I think all the other incidents that she describes are one thing, but because we've actually seen what he did in the elevator incident, like she described to him, she says, quote, "When you get fucked up the wrong way," and that's in the defense put this in specifically, "when you get fucked up the wrong way," she's blaming it on the drugs or the alcohol. She says, "You always want to show me that you have the power and you knock me around. I'm not a rag doll. I'm someone's child." There's still some self-esteem in there. There's still some sense of right and wrong in there. She knows that she's not being treated correctly. And then she turns around and says, like, "I love you." I don't want to love nobody like that. Baby girl. Also came up during the trial, Cassie is expecting a $10 million settlement from the Intercontinental Hotel because of the tape. August 2016. This is what I mentioned before about Cassie and Diddy being on break, but they were still hanging out. Cassie and Diddy were in the car. I think she said they were headed to the doctor. She says her phone was open and Diddy snatched her phone and ran down Wilshire Boulevard in LA. He suspected Cassie was dating this NFL player. And so he actually took the phone and called the guy. They don't name the NFL player. It says when Cassie returned home without her phone, her mother called the police. Her mother is going to testify, I think, this upcoming week. Diddy returned Cassie's phone later that day. Here's when shit starts. It doesn't start. Shit gets even crazier than it was before. The defense asked Cassie, they said, "Are you absolutely sure that you were raped in your living room in August 2018? And Cassie confirms, yes, I am sure it was August 2018. In August 2018, Cassie and Diddy had broken up. She says she met up for dinner with Diddy for like closure. He drove her home and then he raped her in her living room. So I think the defense thought that you're accusing him of rape because you were in this relationship and you don't want your husband to know that you actually had sex with Diddy while you were still in a relationship with your now husband. Cassie was like, no, he raped me then. And then like a month later, I actually had sex with him consensually. What? Yeah. So this is Cassie's version of events. Diddy raped her in August 2018. She told her now husband, then boyfriend, about the rape around when it happened. And she said he punched a hole in the wall. He was so mad he punched a hole in the wall. The following month, Cassie texts Diddy that she heard he was dating. And she says, I actually need to stop even caring. September 2018, Diddy texts Cassie. He says, I want you to love me. And Cassie responds, I do love you. I would just prefer not being one of your girlfriends anymore. They agreed to meet the next day. A month after, she accuses him of sexually assaulting her in her living room. She said that when that sexual assault took place, she was crying and she was telling him no. Even after that, she has sex with him consensually. She cheated on her then boyfriend to have sex with a man who she is now accusing her in this trial of abusing her for years. If I was any member of the prosecution, it would take everything in me to just bury my head in my hands because I'm like, oh my God, the sex trafficking part of our case, I think it just fell apart. For this witness, they still got 2 more. I'm absolutely positive the prosecution is going to put some sort of trauma therapist or psychologist on the stand to help the jury and also all of the people, following this trial to help us understand Cassie's mindset and the grooming and the destructive nature of all of this. But just like reading it, I was just like, girl, what? On top of that, Cassie confirms that while she was with Diddy, her now husband called her on FaceTime. She doesn't say whether she answered or not. October 2018, she texts Diddy. She's out of the relationship, again, in a new relationship. Diddy has raped her 2 months before. She has had consensual sex with him 30 days after the rape and then 30 days before this text. She texts him. She says, I am lost without you. I'm going to leave it at that. It's hard to understand. I look forward to the psychologist or trauma therapist or whoever's coming in to help us make sense of why Cassie is making these choices. I understand people in abusive relationships make choices that just defy the logic of people who are not in the relationship. We read about so many instances of domestic abuse. It takes like 7 or 8 times for a woman to leave her abuser for good. There's a lot of difficult, challenging psychology that goes into all this that if you have not been in a situation, it's difficult to understand. So instead of making judgment, even though I'm like, girl, what the fuck? You got to give me that. You got to give me what the fuck, because this is a lot. I'm gonna take a beat and say, like, I look forward to it being explained so I can have a better understanding. The defense asked Cassie, we're almost done with the Cassie part. The defense asked Cassie if being with Diddy gave her career opportunities. And she says, sometimes given, but earned as well. I would have liked somebody to point out that being with Diddy was supposed to give her career opportunities, not just because he was her boyfriend, but because she was signed to his label. People keep glossing over this part of it. She was signed to Bad Boy. She could not get a record label deal with another record label because she was signed to Bad Boy on a 10-album deal. So the idea that like, oh, well, because you were with Diddy, like you got to work with certain artists like Kid Cudi or Nicki Minaj or whoever else, and you would have not had these opportunities otherwise. Like, well, I should have had these opportunities because I'm an artist signed to his label. You should be taking care of me professionally because, again, I am an artist signed to your label. She also adds, if Sean was in the mood for a freak off, my work would take a back seat. She said that would be my career not being paid attention to because I had to do the other thing. And she added, she said, quote, I had a whole other job, basically a sex worker. She had testified earlier in the week that when they would do freak-offs, they could last anywhere from like 36 hours up to 4.5 days. And then she said that she would spend the rest of the week recovering. She was doing IVs, she was resting, and they were doing freak-offs weekly. So she didn't really have much time to do a whole lot of other things.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
Vacations will never be the same. Welcome to the theme parks of Universal Orlando Resort. With spectacular hotels and more, Universal Orlando offers an entire week of vacation awesome. Visit universalorlando.com.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Cassie does acknowledge that Diddy was controlling to her and other artists on the label as well. That supports the defense's theory that, like, he wasn't just, an asshole to you, he was an asshole to everybody. The defense asked Cassie to confirm she understood that being Combs' girlfriend meant having to do freak-offs. And she said that, yes, she learned that over time. In addition to Craigslist and Backpage, the couple used Cowboys for Angels escort service. That escort service was featured on a Showtime show called Gigolos. Cassie says that she doesn't hate Combs even now. She says, quote, "I have love for the past and what it was." He did a number on this girl that I think is still being done. She does say that she was able to get out of her recording contract with Diddy after their relationship ended eventually. She said, "I had to fight my way out." She doesn't go into detail about that. She says in March or May 2019, she says Diddy texted her, "Congratulations, I'm truly happy for you. You're going to make a beautiful mother. God bless." And then the following year, March 2020, he texted Cassie, "Miss my best friend. Hope you're well. Please know I'm always here if you need me." And then added, "It's definitely been rough without your friendship." Every woman who's ever dated a man that she stopped dealing with has received some variation of that message. It doesn't mean he wants you. He just wants to see if he still has access. I literally got one of those yesterday. He asked me something. I responded the next day. He sent me a link to something, and I said, "I can't see it." And he said, "Do you still have me blocked?" And I was like, "Of course I do." He was like, "Demetria, all these years, you're not going to unblock me?" And I said, "I have no intention of ever unblocking you, just so we're clear." And I was like, "If it's an emergency, you know how to reach me. I've responded to you here. But, I don't need to have any engagement with you otherwise." All right. Diddy texts Cassie. He says, "We're honestly lucky to be alive. God was watching over us." Niggas love to bring God up after they did some crazy shit. And then he adds, he says, "I hope you can forgive me." Cassie responded to him. This again is in March 2020. We about to go into COVID. Cassie responded that she never hated him and that she wouldn't be, quote, "at this beautiful point in her life without him." And here he is. He goes for the kill. He asked her to meet up. He said, "I send this message with all respect for your marriage." And for clarity, because you never really know with these two, they actually did not meet up. 2023, Cassie goes inpatient treatment center, 45 days, PTSD. The defense is shady. They named the treatment center that she went to. They said, this is a place that treats patients for sexual compulsion and love addiction. Is that what you were there for? And Cassie's like, "No, I was there for PTSD." The prosecutors back, they have a redirect. They asked Cassie, they said, "Would you give the $20 million back if you never had to have a freak off?" And Cassie breaks down sobbing, and she says she would. She said, quote, "If I never had to have freak offs, I would have had agency and autonomy, and I wouldn't have had to work so hard to get it back." After Cassie finishes her testimony, we're still not done with day 5, her husband released a statement via Cassie's attorney. Put this in context. Cassie testifies for more or less 4 days. She spent the first 2 days outlining some of the most heinous physical abuse, sexual acts. She alleges that she was forced to do them. She was coerced to do them. There were some pretty crazy details. The one about I choked because there was so much urine in my mouth. Cassie breaks down on the stand probably once a day. People were vocal about Cassie's husband and if he was okay listening to his wife detail all of the sexually depraved things that she participated in, whether it was with consent or by force. another man raped your wife. All these different men had sex with your wife. Your wife was out here doing all sorts of like freaky deaky shit. She's performed so much oral sex that she has sores. And I was like, she's describing herpes, is she not? But that's me speculating. I'm not sure. That's what I thought. She's having sex with 3 or 4 men over, a couple days. All this depraved shit. And people were like, is her husband okay? Not is she okay? Is her husband okay? Like, this woman has just detailed 11 years of essentially abuse, and people are more concerned about the feelings of the man she's married to than they are about the person who experienced it. Really? Really? Her husband released a statement. He says, there has been speculation online surrounding how it must feel for me to sit here and listen to my wife's testimony. He continues, I have felt so many things sitting there. I have felt tremendous pride and overwhelming love for Cass. I have felt profound anger that she has been subjected to sitting in front of a person who tried to break her. So to him and all those who helped him along the way, please know this, you did not. Her husband, Alex Fine, he adds, I did not save Cassie, as some have said. To say that is an insult to the years of painful work my wife has done to save herself. Cassie saved Cassie. She alone broke free from the abuse, coercion, violence, and threats. She did the work of fighting the demons that only a demon himself could have done to her. All I have done is love her as she has loved me. I'm going to say this is going to sound kind of controversial. It won't be the first time y'all dragged me last week for dumb shit. Maybe this won't be considered dumb shit. Drag me with a reason. Something wrong with everybody involved in this case, including her husband. Not for staying with her through all of this, not for supporting her after these things have happened. But when I got to the point in the testimony where Cassie was like, yeah, so I moved on. I was with somebody else. I was with my boyfriend, who's now my husband. And I agreed to meet up with Diddy for closure. And then he raped me. Okay. That situation is what it is. You being raped is not your fault. Calling him a month after he raped her to be like, oh, I saw you were dating somebody else, and letting him know she feels a little jealous, opening that door, and then meeting up with him and having consensual sex with him, the man who did all these things to her while she's with her boyfriend, for him to know about this and then still stay back then, something wrong with him too. Now, I've read that his mother was a survivor of domestic violence. I read that he ran without training. He ran a marathon, 50 miles, to raise money and awareness for domestic violence. That's admirable. I don't think he's a bad man. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that something wrong with him too, to be in a relationship with somebody who's just had this incredibly traumatic experience, has never been to therapy. But when you first got up with her, she's still going back and forth with her abuser, and then you stayed in that situation, you're not okay either. I'm recognizing we all out here fucked up, and everybody is quote unquote ordinary people. We don't know which way to go. We all just out here doing the best that we can. To get with Cassie in the mindset that she was in doesn't mean she wasn't a good person, but in the traumatized state that she was in, and then decide okay, I'm gonna be with you and we're gonna build a life together. And it was relatively quickly at that. And I was like, oh, he needs help too. There's no way possible their situation can be healthy just based on how it began. You cheat on Ryan Leslie with Diddy. You're with him for 11 years. He is a seasoned predator who is 17 years your senior. And then you cheat on that man with this new man. And then you cheat on the new man with your old abusive man. And then you marry the new man. There's no time for breather or self-searching or sitting with yourself. Or she only started therapy in 2023. There's not been time for her to heal. And then you're popping out babies every other year. I want Cassie to be okay as much as the next person, because Lord knows she's been through hell. But there's no possible way this current situation can be healthy. Fight me. You've done it for less. Cassie also released a statement via her attorney. She says, quote, I hope that my testimony has given strength and a voice to the other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up and also heal from abuse and fear. She added, I am glad to put this chapter of my life to rest. I told you the judge said he wanted to move this trial along quickly. So we got 2 more people to talk about. It's relatively quick. I know this episode is running long, but there's a lot to cover. The next witness is Yassine Bender, special agent with Homeland Security Investigations. Bender searched Diddy's room at the Park Hyatt Hotel when he was arrested in 2024. He had traveled to New York. His attorneys had made a negotiation with the feds where Diddy was supposed to turn himself in. Instead, they arrested him a day early in the lobby of his hotel. There was video. TMZ had it, and then Shade Room had it. Everybody had it. I would like to imagine that if he suspected that he was going to be arrested, he wouldn't have had, what Bender's about to testify that she found in the room. In Diddy's hotel room after he got arrested, Homeland Security Investigations went upstairs and they found, quote, lots of baby oil, Astroglide, a mood lighting device, and 2 small baggies of pink powder that later tested positive for ketamine and MDMA. And there was also a fanny pack with $9,000 cash. I said, sir, I know good and full well hell you wasn't sitting up here planning to have a goddamn freak off, one more freak off, before you turned yourself over to the Fed. I wish I knew, because everything about the details of what they found in that room is everything that Cassie and the escort testified that they used during the freak off. Lots of baby oil. It wasn't just like, a small thing of baby oil. Make sure you moisturize. You're not ashy when you go outside. Put a little something on your legs, something on your elbows. Lots of baby oil. Not one bottle, not travel size. Lots of baby oil. Astroglide. Astroglide is used for one thing. A mood lighting device. Cassie said he liked to fuck around with the lighting. The escort said he liked to fuck around with the lighting. He liked to direct. Sir. And drugs. You getting ready to turn yourself into the feds in the morning and you got ketamine and MDMA in your room. $9,000 in cash. You was about to pay somebody to do something. The shit that the government had literally indicted you for. Literally, there's a grand jury indictment for this shit. They on to you, bruh. They had raided your house and found 1,000 bottles of baby oil. And you was still out here doing this shit, planning to do it the night before you went to the fucking feds. Sir. Bender also testified there was a woman who was staying with Diddy in his hotel room before he was arrested. Sir. I hope that woman is taking a stand. If this woman is taking a stand, I hope that woman is taking a stand. Please, Lord, let this woman be taking a stand. Dawn Richard, she's the last person to testify on Friday. She only had brief testimony, but one of the things that she said is she witnessed Diddy attacking Cassie in the kitchen. She said she and Cassie were downstairs. Cassie was making breakfast, scrambling eggs. And she said Diddy came downstairs pissed because his food wasn't ready and picked up the pan and tried to hit Cassie in the head with it. Dawn said that it didn't connect and Cassie dropped to the floor in anticipation. Dawn testified Diddy dragged Cassie upstairs by her hair with his arm around her neck. She testified she heard glass breaking and yelling. Dawn said she didn't intervene or call the police because she was afraid of what that might mean for Me Too. The next day, Diddy invited Dawn, Kalena Harper, Dirty Money group member, to his home. He brought them into a recording studio. He locked the door and he told him what they witnessed was, quote, passion and what lovers do. Diddy added, when he's talking to Dawn and Kalena, he says, it was in our best interest if we didn't say anything. And, quote, where he comes from, it's Uptown. He says, people go missing if they talk. And then he gave them flowers. It's like, this nigga's crazy. Not that we didn't know, but I'm like, this nigga is crazy. So time was up. I think prosecution actually got a 2-minute warning. The judge is not playing with these business hours. I think next week it goes from 9:30 to 3, which is a little easier on all the reporters. I think they kept the long days so they get as much testimony as they could from Cassie because she only had that first week to testify due to the pending birth of her child. But coming up on the docket is Cassie's former best friend of 17 years. That's the best friend that Diddy hit with a wooden hanger. I have a note here that Diddy and Cassie both paid her a settlement after that incident. Cassie's mom is going to testify this week. And at some point, 2 other women with accusations of sexual coercion will also testify. So that is our episode. We're up to date. Depending on what happens, depends on when I do the bonus episode. I'm trying to keep the Diddy stuff separate from our regular Wednesday podcast just because Diddy will overwhelm everything. But we have a lot to talk about for Wednesday's episode. In the meantime, it's Sunday morning. I actually have brunch plans. All right. Talk soon. Bye.
This episode is brought to you by Disney's Lilo & Stitch, only in theaters this Friday. A reimagining of Disney's animated classic, Lilo & Stitch is the wildly funny and touching story of a lonely Hawaiian girl, Lilo, and the fugitive alien Stitch, who helps to mend her broken family. Lilo & Stitch crashes into theaters this Friday. Rated PG. Get tickets now.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.